Hi guys, how you doing? So in today's tutorial what I'm going to be doing is using the Spring Boot JMS and specifically using the Spring Framework JmsTemplate. So I'm going to be creating a publishing application that's going to publish an object to the JmsTemplate. JmsTemplate is going to be wired so that it has a converter and it's going to convert the object into XML, and that's going to be backed by a message converter, which is actually backed by a JAXB marshaller. And then the publisher, once it sends that across the message broker, the consumer will then consume that XML, and what it will do is automatically convert that XML into its Java objects. So we're going to back the consumer with the message converter, and we're also going to back it with the unmarshaller too. So that way we can send an object in our code from our publisher to the JmsTemplate. It'll handle all the marshalling and unmarshalling to XML. Our consumer then reads the Java object. We don't need to reference any unmarshaller, or we don't need to do any of that in our code. We're just going to configure our listener to automatically do that for us. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial.
Hi guys, how you doing? So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is create a maven project, and this is going to contain our JAXB objects that are going to be shared between our consumer and our publisher. So I'm going to go ahead and create this and call just the product DTO, and I'm going to delete this package name and click finish. So the first thing I'm going to do in here is go ahead and change the Java compiler and the Java target. So if you go ahead and open up your POM, we're going to paste these into our properties. And what I'm also going to do is bring in a build dependency. So that's going to be our maven JAXB plugin. So inside here, I'm going to save that, and that's going to look for any schemas located in source main resources, and it's going to try and generate our JAXB objects from them. So go ahead and create a source folder. We're going to call that source main resources, and inside that we're going to create a schema file, so an XML schema, and we're going to place that in the schema file, so XFD, and we're going to call that product schema v1. Click finish. I'm going to paste in a schema I created a few minutes ago. Click save, and then what we're going to do is run a maven update on the project, and that should generate our dependencies for us. So inside here, source target, you should see column Philip start orders, and we have a product there, and that, of course that package name is generated by our target namespace here, Philip start. So now we have our JAXB dependencies, which will enable us to marshal from Java to XML and XML back into Java. So that's great. Now what we want to do is go ahead and create our publisher. So you want to create a Spring starter project, and we're going to call it publisher. Yes. We're going to call this publisher, and click next, and we're going to bring in ActiveMQ. So click next, finish, and ActiveMQ will actually bring in Spring JMS as well. So when the publisher opens, I'm going to go ahead and delete column Philip start publisher. I'm then going to open up the POM, and I'm going to bring down the product DTO jar as a dependency. So I'm going to bring in the artifact and the group ID. I'm going to just replace this one, and I'm going to change scope to version, and I'm going to bring in the 0.01 snapshot version of the product. So now you should see we now have, as there's no builders, we have a reference directly into this project. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and actually look inside the Spring AutoConfigured jar files. So if you go ahead and we're going to look in JMS, and if you open that up, and if you look in JMS Autoconfiguration, you should see here that we have an autoconfigured JmsTemplate. And what it does is it's going to take in a connection factory, and it's going to set that as the connection factory, and it also takes a message converter. So this is the converter we're going to set to JAXB, and the connection factory we're going to use ActiveMQ's Spring Boot's autoconfigure us a connection factory, ActiveMQ connection factory. So yeah, that's really great. How do we do that? So we want to go ahead first and open up our source main resources properties file. Well, what we can do is use spring.activemq.broker URL, and We can paste in the broker URL. So if you're running one, I'm going to start off mine on the same server here. So it's going to be localhost 61.61.6. And what I'm going to do is, while I'm here, I'm going to create an outbound endpoint. So that's going to be our ActiveMQ name. So I'm going to call it order.processing and the name of the environment typically. So I'm just going to call this development. And what we also want, we're going to need this later, is the context path. So if you remember in here, our source, it's going to be the same name as that. So that's our context path for JAXB. So com.philipstarrett.orders. And we also want the schema location, as we want to provide some validation. And of course, that was in XSD, and our schema name was product schema version 1. So hopefully if I have no typos there, then everything will be good. And if you want to go ahead and close that. So now that will auto-configure our ActiveMQ connection factory. So we're going to create another class. So we're going to call this, we're going to place this in configure. And we're going to call this JMSConfig. Go ahead and click finish. And inside our configuration bean, what we're going to do is want to configure, first of all, our MarshallingMessageConverter. So as you remember, we were in our JMS Autoconfiguration. This takes in our message converter, which is passed in through the through the constructor. So we're going to want to set that to a MarshallingMessageConverter. So we're going to create that bean, and we're going to MarshallingMessageConverter. So there you go. And there's actually a few, so I'll need to make sure I'm bringing the right one. And I'm going to call create MarshallingMessageConverter. And what I need is a JAXB marshaller to go with that. So I'm going to return a new MarshallingMessageConverter, one that takes in their marshaller. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in the JMS support one. I'm going to create I'm going to go ahead and create this method, which is going to return us the JAXB marshaller. And inside this marshaller, we need to provide the context path and our schema resource. So they're the two properties that we created earlier on. And what we're going to do is create a JAXB2 marshaller. We're going to set the context path. And we're going to set the schema to our schema resource. And what we're also going to do is create a map, which is going to be a string to an object, and that's going to be our properties. And what we're doing this for is because we want to set our marshaller to print in pretty print, so I can show you. So go ahead and do the imports. We're going to use marshaller.jaxb formatted output, and we're going to set that to true. We're going to say jaxb to marshaller.set marshaller properties to properties. Go ahead and save that. I'm just going to go ahead and fix this, so we don't need that. We'll bring this in via constructor. We should be ready to go. So now we have our JMS configuration. What I'm going to do is go ahead and in the publisher config, I'm going to auto wire our JMS template in here. And let's see if it's actually being created successfully. And to do this, I'm going to implement command line runner. And from that, I'm going to simply publish a message. So JmsTemplate dot, I'm going to say convert and send. And what I'm going to do is send a simple object there. So convert, send. I'm going to then pass in the destination and the message. So the destination is going to be to our queue name. So remember, we created an application properties. We had an outbound endpoint. Go ahead and copy that in. We'll bring that in as a property. So destination. So now we have our outbound endpoint and the message that we're going to send. So that's going to be the product. So remember, we created a product. So this is our JAXB Objects that we created from our schema. So we're going to set the product ID to a unique universal ID. So random UID, that to string. And we'll set the name to my name. I'm a product. And of course, I'm going to pass the product into our JmsTemplate.convert and send. So we're going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to insert a few breakpoints here. So I switch between Linux, Mac, and Windows a lot, so my keypads are all messed up. So I'm going to go ahead and run this and see if we have any breakpoints. So I'm going to actually put a breakpoint in here as well. I already have one there, so I can actually make sure that everything's wired as I expected it. So debug is Spring Boot up. Let's fix any errors here we have. So yes, we're there. Okay, we have a message converter, but it's going to be a proxy. So what I'm going to do is play it in the next one. So, okay, here's our ActiveMQ connection factory that we configured earlier. So there's our right broker URL, which is good. And go ahead and click next. Let that play through. So now in our JMS template, we can see here it's the same ActiveMQ connection factory. So our ID, our broker URL is going to be the same as well if it's there. There's there, yep. And go down next, and we're going to get the message converter. So if we go scroll down here, we'll see our message converter is the MarshallingMessageConverter, which is one we created, and there's our marshaller. And inside the marshaller, there's our context path. So now we know that our JMS template's being wired nicely together. And we set the message converter and we click next. So now we run that through, and I'm going to continue that. So now we're convert and send. So if I play it through, there we go, we've successfully sent the message. I'm going to go ahead and open up our ActiveMQ console. So as you see here, we have an order.processing.d. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. And inside we have one message that was sent at the time of this tutorial, I can see. And again, here you're going to see that there's the XML. So there's the UUID, there's namespace, and the product name. So that's great. So now we don't have to worry about actually converting the XML before we send in our code. We can just pass in an object and it will send it for us. So that's great. Now how do we go ahead and create our publisher? Well, very simple as well. So go ahead and start our consumer, file new, and we're going to create a Spring starter project. And we're going to basically do the same thing that we did, only we're going to have a consumer here. We're going to call this consumer. We're going to click next. We're going to bring in ActiveMQ again. Next. And finish. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and bring down the same product dependency. So open up the consumer, delete boilerplate code there. Go to your POM and you should see dependency. I'm going to replace this one. Def, save that. And let's go ahead and create our configuration class. So consumer, start main processor. We need a new class. We're going to place that in config. So JmsConfig. Next. Configuration. It's going to be bean. So this is going to be basically the exact same code as we had in here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it in here. Save that, and I'm also going to go ahead and look at our properties files to make sure we have the same connection. So there we want the same properties again in here. And because we're dealing microservices, you know, it's okay to duplicate code. It's far easier to duplicate code than actually go ahead and maintain it in this fashion. And we need to bring in Spring OXM, it looks like, for the marshaller. So if we go back in our consumers, or sorry, our publishers POM, we can see we have Spring OXM. I'm going to go ahead and bring that in. I'm going to delete this dependency as we don't need it in our publisher. Go ahead and our consumer there. I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to bring our dependencies in. So we have our JAXB 2 marshaller now, and it's very, very simple. What we want to do is go ahead and annotate this with enable JMS. So this is going to allow us to use our JmsListener annotations. So you want to stop that. You want to open up your consumer application, and inside here what we're going to do is create a method called public void process, and in here what we have is the product. And we're going to simply bring in a logger. So private static final logger log. So I'm going to bring the slf4j dot get logger. And what I'm going to do is to simply log the product, which is probably not going to contain a toString, so I'm going to debug here. But what this is going to enable us to do is actually add our JmsListener annotation here, and our destination is going to be our outbound queue. So outbound.endpoint. This one's going to be inbound.endpoint. So go ahead and bring in your Spring property, save that. And save the file, bring in any imports. So that's going to be to log4j logger. Okay, switch the logger, bring in the slf4j logger, save that. Now I'm going to have a breakpoint here, and I'm going to debug, and we should consume that one message. So file debug as Spring Boot application. We're going to let this play through again. So we looked at that earlier. Okay, so now we have picked up the product. There's the product. There it is. Phillips start with our endpoint. We're going to log that. And now if we go back to our ActiveMQ console, you should see that we probably have nothing in that queue now. So okay, we haven't committed it. So we play that through, and then we refresh it. There we have nothing, so we have one consumer, and we have no pending message, and we have consumed the message. So now we can run our publisher, and we're going to basically just send directly into our consumer. So if we go ahead back to Java here, right click run as Spring Boot application, you should see it send the message, and our consumer will pick it up automatically. Okay, so that's one to switch it. So there's another one processed through. So we go back to the publisher, which is terminated. We know that it's started up, sent the message, and our consumer is then processed it. So that's pretty excellent. It's very, very easy now to go ahead and create your Spring Boot application to enable JMS and send that across. So sending the message, so it's a Java object, which will then be converted into whatever you want. So that could be converted into JAXB, converted into a JSON, or maybe just send the bytes over the network. You'll then send that to your message broker, where it'll sit in a queue. Your publisher then hands off responsibility, and your consumer will then be pulling on that queue and looking for new messages. It sees that there's a new message, and because we set the converter in our JMS listener, we're going to go ahead and automatically unmarshal that into Java JAXB objects. But in your case, that could be anything again, like I said, JSON or whatever. And then it means you can just simply accept in your product, and away you go. So you don't need to inject your JAXB marshaller in or start messing about with, stream sources and results and all that stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you liked it, give us a thumb up and comment, subscribe if you enjoyed it. Take it easy.